to another episode of the Sports Enthusiast podcast. My name is Aaron Randak, joined by
Ash McConnell.
And Luke McGee.
Today, it's a great day. The NFL season is wrapped up. We'll be talking a little bit about the Super Bowl, a few NBA topics, then maybe our top 5 starting rotations in baseball. Stick around for that one. I suppose we could just get right into the old Super Bowl recap. We're going to say one thing that kind of surprised us was the Chiefs' struggles, Bucks' dominance, something like that. We'll let one of you two get started on that one, whoever wants to take the reins.
Lucas, you go ahead.
First of all, I told you so. Sorry. As the one person on the podcast picked the Super Bowl correctly, I need to hold that over your heads until the next big event. Anyway, as I carry on, I hate to be that guy, but I did kind of predict how this game was going to go down. I said the Bucks defense was going to come out and just slow down the Chiefs offense, and they did a great job at that. What surprised me though was that Mahomes just couldn't get into his groove. Obviously, his offensive line was the equivalent to a Chicago toll booth, let everyone through. Just it wasn't what I expected from a Super Bowl, but all around, the Bucks came out to play, played a great game. Their offense got the job done. Yeah, Ashton, go ahead.
I'm kind of on the opposite spectrum. I think the thing that surprised me the most between the two teams was the Bucks' dominance. I mean, I I thought it would have been a close game. I thought the Bucks would have fought back after the Chiefs' big lead, but I did not expect the Bucks' defense to down into the game how depleted the Chiefs' O line was. But JPP, Shaq Barrett played fantastic. Seeing Devin White, Levante David. I mean, that entire defense just played really good, and to give it props, great game plan. I did not expect the Bucks to dominate the Chiefs how they did.
I think, I kind of agree with Ashton. That Bucks defense has they just stepped up. No team has stopped the Chiefs like that Bucks team did. And I think that defense deserves a lot more credit than they're getting right now. All the credit's kind of going towards Tommy Touchdown, but that Bucks defense really won the game for the Bucks. Any other thoughts, gentlemen, on the old Super Bowl?
I'm good.
I'm good too.
All right. A little bit more of a Super Bowl related topic again. What could this mean for kind of Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs moving forward? Will we see some, key additions in the offseason? Go ahead and start, boys.
So, in terms of what I think they need to go after, to me, I think first and foremost is you need to take a look at your offensive line at least. Yeah, they were beaten up, but for your backups to be doing something as bad as that, it becomes kind of scary. They got guys that are going into free agency, Kleshio Osemele, Rashad Breeland. I mean, they have a few guys that they're going to want to bring back. And I think, to me, the big thing they should focus on is trying to maintain the team they brought this year, because it should not be this next year Super Bowl. If they make it there, they shouldn't be seeing the same outcome of tons of injuries, hopefully not a ton of COVID stuff going on. I think this team was good. It's just wrong place, wrong game. Ashton?
Yeah, I think it was just kind of bad luck, Obviously, I think if the Chiefs' all line was healthy, they would have definitely played a lot better in that Super Bowl. But obviously, it's how it goes sometimes. As far as for the future, I I'm confident for next year. But after that, I mean, this could almost be like an Aaron Rodgers type situation where Aaron Rodgers obviously is dominant with the offense, and then with Mahomes' $500 million contract, they just won't have the money to pay everybody else. And draft and develop really good players. I mean, it's going to be kind of tough moving forward. Who knows? Can maybe they can develop McCall Hardman to be what Tyreek Hill is when Tyreek's gone, and maybe they can get a replacement for Travis Kelce. But I think next year could be kind of the peak for the Chiefs before maybe a little bit of a downfall in the near future.
Yeah, I think with this Chiefs team, people don't realize how banged up they were kind of throughout the whole year, and especially in the Super Bowl. That loss of their two tackles, I mean, we saw the implications that had in the Super Bowl. I mean, Mahomes just had no time. He ran for 500 yards behind the line of scrimmage. That was, I mean, that game was just not good for the entire Chiefs offense. And I do think next year, like Ashton mentioned, that they will be fine. There's going to be, I don't think they'll miss a beat because they're not really losing too many pieces after this year. But once you start having to pay those weapons, top of the line money, this is a potential precarious situation for the Chiefs. But I do think with a talent like Mahomes, you're going to see people take lesser money to play with him, kind of like what we're seeing in Tampa Bay right now. So I do think, the Chiefs will be fine in the long run. I just think that some of these pieces are either going to have to take less money or the Chiefs are going to have to let them walk. On to the next topic. Orlando Brown, not too happy with his ball club. He's requesting he wants to get out of there. Thoughts?
What's most interesting to me is that one of his main reasons for leaving is that he wants to switch sides of the ball, wants to switch tackle spots. I'm surprised that's something that would want to drive him out, being on a team that is probably going to stay in the hunt for the playoffs for the next couple of years at least. I'm just wondering if he's understanding that there's a chance he goes to, I don't know, the Jets. To me, it's one of those things where he's asking for something that he shouldn't want to be having as bad as he does. Him overlooking an obviously okay situation, unless there's other driving factors under the water that I'm not aware of. I'm not for this trade personally, but hey, if he wants out, he wants out.
I think from what I'm reading, I mean, I agree. I don't know why he would want to leave Baltimore. I mean, they have a great culture going with Lamar Jackson, John Harbaugh. It's because, I mean, you saw what David Bauer is making as a left tackle. He wants the money elsewhere. And, I mean, you don't see right tackles getting that. You see the left tackles getting that because that's normally the blind side of a quarterback. He wants that type of money, and obviously with Baltimore having Ronnie Stanley there, he doesn't really get that opportunity, and that's pretty much the main reason why he wants out.
Yeah, you guys have kind of covered it pretty well. I do think when you look at a team that could trade for him, maybe like a Miami Dolphins, as they did trade Larry Tunzel last offseason, or 2 offseasons ago, one of the two, I don't remember. But nonetheless, they kind of need someone at that left tackle spot as their draft picks this year. Obviously, it was early, but it didn't work out fantastic for them. So I think if you get an Orlando Brown type of guy, that really stirs up the offensive line for Tua, and that could be very beneficial.
For me, the best case scenario for Miami to me would be to take Ewell in that draft. He's being looked at as one of the best talents we've seen in the last couple of years. I think that's a better idea than trying to make a trade for an Orlando Brown where they're going to ask for a first rounder, a future first rounder. I mean, they're going to want as much as they can get because Orlando Brown's a very skilled tackle, and that's going to be a very big driving factor. Is it may be hard to trade him to a team who doesn't want to just throw down all their chips right away on a guy who's already jumping ship on a team that he's been after. Like, Ashton, go ahead.
To that, I was going to say the same thing. I wonder what Baltimore's asking price is going to be because going back to what A brought up with, I mean, gave up, I believe, like 2 first-round picks for him. We know what they are. I just wonder what a more fit, well-run organization would be willing to give up for him, and would they be willing to pay him what he wants? But the big question with Orlando Brown.
All right, on to the next. Marcus Mariota drawing some trade interest. What are your thoughts on that? Where do we kind of see his best fit teams?
I mean, that's a loaded question to me. It's whoever wants to buy into a quarterback that may not be able to get the job done. It's someone who's willing to take a risk. 49ers, maybe. I mean, can get them out of the Garoppolo situation. It might be better for them. Obviously, Mariota's on a lower contract. Maybe the Saints would be interested in someone like him. To me, he's just an interesting quarterback in general. His play style isn't most common. I mean, you see a lot more pocket quarterbacks now. You see your few scramblers here and there. Mariota is just an interesting quarterback, in my opinion. Obviously, Oakland's not going to hesitate to get rid of him because if you can get anything for your backup quarterback near a second rounder, you kind of want to take that chance because you could always call up an accountant if you're the Rams. Um, it's just I don't know. I wouldn't buy into Mariota. Obviously, Carolina's probably someone that's looking into him, and all I can say is, damn, passion.
I think Marcus Mariota, I think his best case scenario is not to stay in Las Vegas and I hope that there are, because looking at kind of other teams around the league, I don't really know where would how they would really trade for him. I mean, unless it would be a very late draft pick that they would. He's in a tough spot and he hasn't really helped himself that much. I mean, he balled out pretty well against the Chargers when he got his chance to fill in for Derek Carr, but other than that, you saw with the Titans he was kind of mediocre. Hasn't lived up to his hype as a top pick in the NFL draft. I think his best situation would be to hope that Derek Carr gets traded, stay with the Raiders, get your chance there, and see what you can do with John Gruden.
I'll tell you the perfect fit for Marcus Mariota. Indianapolis. Let me tell you why. They need a quarterback. They have a great team. They have a great offensive line. That is kind of a winning recipe for with a quarterback of the play style like Marcus Mariota. I do think he can really get the job done. Obviously, he was not fantastic in Tennessee after, he was the number 2 pick in the draft. So much hype out of college. He really didn't live up to that, but I do think that he can find a little reemergence in Indianapolis as they have all the pieces for a winning ball club, and they just need somebody at quarterback, and I think Marcus Mariota can fill that void for a pretty low asking price.
I don't know if Indy really wants to try Marcus Mariota. I mean, maybe they do, but I don't. I think at this point they realize they're gonna want to try and grab a star quarterback, like if they could have gotten Matthew Stafford, or they could somehow get Deshaun Watson. I think that's what they're gonna really look for, or they're just gonna look to build off of a really young QB. I don't know if they want to try and risk Marcus Mariota. I mean, you saw what happened with Jacoby Brissett. They gave him his little deal, and he obviously didn't pan out. So then they went and got Phillip Rivers. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe I could be wrong. I just don't see Indianapolis going after Mariota.
I just don't really know who else they would kind of go after. I don't like I said, I don't think Deshaun Watson's getting traded just because the Texans have refused to even accept calls for him at this point. That could obviously change, but just with the way it's looking right now, Deshaun Watson, he's looks like he's staying in Houston, and I don't know who else the market has for anyone at the quarterback position besides Mariota.
Someone kind of quietly flying along, as he always does, Ryan Fitzpatrick. I know they'd be getting another older quarterback, but it'd be a good way to segue you into another year where you have a chance at maybe a free agent quarterback hitting big on somebody. I mean, yeah, Dak's a free agent, but I think he's gonna get tagged. Um, it's just I think that's somewhere they can look, but and there's quarterbacks they could take next year in the draft. That'll probably fall pretty far just because it's that quarterback heavy draft this year. People like Spencer Rattler that might not end up drafting very high. Keaton Slavis. I mean, there's definitely chances going forward. So if they get a 1 year quarterback like Fitzpatrick who done as he has shown with Fitzmagic. I don't know. That's where I would be leaning towards more.
All right, if that's all we have on Mariota, we're going to move on to the big release this morning. J.J. Watt getting cut from the Texans. Ian Rappaport said earlier that the Texans have kind of been thinking about this for a while. They would have explored trade options, but it was almost just too difficult because the contract would have had to get restructured, and J.J. Watt would have to agree to the restructure with the new team. So it was almost better for them to just release him and kind of not deal with, all the work that would go into just getting a trade for a potential fifth rounder and restructuring that contract. So he is completely free now. $17 million dumped off the books for the Texans. Where do we think he can end up, and what kind of impact will he be giving his new team?
I mean, to try to predict where he's going to go is just going to be taking a shot at the dark at this point. There's a lot of good defensive linemen, free agents right now. Clowney's deal is up. Justin Houston, Yannick Ngakwe. Yeah, that's right. I did that one somewhat
Nice
well.
try.
Uh,
Ngakwe.
I got the first right. There's enough defensive linemen in this free agency already that I think JJ Watt might get. I mean, yeah, he's good, and yeah, he's going to get his money, but they're going to prefer to try and get like a Clowney who's a little younger. And so rather than looking for a team, I think his role is going to be more of he's going to go to a team with a younger defensive end. I would say go to like a Washington with Chase Young, but obviously they have Montez Sweat already. It would be absolutely ridiculous if they had all three of them. And he'll play more of a mentoring role, teach what he knows. I think that's where his career is headed, and it'll be interesting to see where he ends up. I have no prediction.
Two teams be terrified for the rest of the league if you went to would be two NFC West teams, the San Francisco 49ers and the LA Rams. Starting with the Niners, I mean, you saw what happened last year, filled with injuries. Now this year they get a chance to come back and be even better than what they were the Super Bowl year. And if he's goes to there, I mean, imagine him with Nick Bosa, Arik Armstead, Fred Warner, those types of players. I mean, yes, they would have to fix up the secondary a little bit, but if they could get him, that could be a scary defense. And also, talking about the Rams and scary defenses, I mean, you saw what they were last year. I think the number one ranked defense in the entire league. Imagine him and Donald, and not to mention Jalen Ramsey, Matthew Stafford. Those two teams, I think the league would have to be a little terrified if he were to sign there.
I think another team where the league would be terrified, the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's got his two brothers there already, and, they could use maybe another 5 technique. Cameron Hayward's getting real old. Someone in there that could still get the job done. I think Aaron Donald would be a home run for the Steelers. And we know how I feel about that defense. It just
Aaron
makes
Donald.
it even more scary.
You said Aaron Donald would be a home run for the Steelers.
Oh, sorry. J.J. Watt. I wasn't paying attention to myself.
No,
But,
yeah,
J.J. Watt would be a home run for the Steelers defense. His brother T.J. on the outside. Move him in, like I said, a nice 5 technique. Maybe put him at 3. Cam Hayward, Minkah Fitzpatrick. That would be a scary combination.
Yeah, I think for a top 5, the team set Rams and Steelers. I would also say, I know it's a little biased, my path. I would also say the Bucks. If deal with Tom Brady and how explosive that defense was, I mean, this postseason, they could just go back to back if are predicted to go back to back.
So I think that'll do it for the National Football League. I'm going to kick it over to Ashton for some NBA topics.
All right. So now, going forward, we're going to change it up. Obviously, we've been doing top 5 power rankings, but if you guys have been listening, it's pretty much the same. We say the same teams over and over again. It's kind of repeating ourselves. So now we're going to change it up. We don't know what to call it, but if you guys have any idea, I mean, we take the help. So our idea is going to be where we choose one top team, one team that's been pitiful, kind of been like sucky this year that we don't think is going to do anything, and then one dark horse team or a team that should be looking out for come postseason time. So Lucas, we'll start with you.
My top team that I'm going to focus on for the first one is going to continue to be the Jazz, as I've been riding their bandwagon this whole time. They're 9-1 in their last 10. They're playing good ball right now. Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert. We know the same tune, and that to me, they're right now my favorite, just based off of how they've started the season, how other teams started the season. That's who I'm buying into as of now. Aaron?
My team is still going to be the Lakers, although I do like that Jazz pick. They have been playing some great basketball as of late. Some other teams you could pick, maybe the Sixers coming off of a big win versus the Nets. They've been playing some pretty good ball. Really, other than that, I think those are the three teams that you could kind of take. Maybe throw the Bucks in there. The Nets have been struggling a little bit, as well as the Clippers. But yeah, the Lakers are definitely my top team. LeBron's playing at an MVP level. Anthony Davis has been on and off this whole year. He took the day off the other day. I think, we kind of need to see him get back into that, 26, 27 points per game area, and I think this Lakers team is destined for another finals.
Yeah, well, I also have the Lakers as a top team. Another top team that I have, I'll say, is the Sixers. I mean, Embiid's been playing an MVP type level. I mean, we've talked about that for how many weeks. Ben Simmons, while yes, he still can't shoot, he's still a great match up well against the Lakers. Obviously, they got perimeter shooters like Seth Curry, Tobias Harris, who's been playing with Rivers. I mean, Shea Allen. I mean, this roster is, I think, best fit. Either them or the Nets are best fit to take down the Lakers. And if that's it for our top teams, let's go to a team that has been kind of bad as of late, who hasn't done really well, and don't expect them to kind of really make an impact these next few weeks.
Not to completely beat a dead horse, but to me, it's still the Mavericks. They're a very on and off team. They're not even close to what they were last year. And to me, it's just they're playing atrocious. I don't see them even going near a playoffs this year. Hurts is pretty sure they don't have their pick going into this year. It seems to be kind of a little spin out. They still have Doncic, who is still a quality basketball player. It's becoming kind of a sad time to get out.
Yeah,
I actually had the Mavericks
currently
Sorry.
I was going to say
Go
the
ahead.
Knicks currently own the Mavs pick, so any Mavs losses would be well appreciated.
Yeah, just to kick in here, I also have the Mavs. They can't shoot. And Luka's been cold as ice from three. That whole team they can't shoot. They're not fantastic defensively. Obviously, Luka has his issues on the defensive end. And I just don't see him turning it around this year. Porzingis, he had like one or two good games, but he has also been kind of struggling so far. So I think it'll be tough for this team to turn it around. Maybe coming into next year would be a team to look out for, but this year I got him as just a trash team.
A team that we just talked about kind of last week, the Washington Wizards. I mean, they are still struggling. They're still inconsistent. Bradley Beal is finally going to be out Friday. It could just be a one-game thing. Who knows? But I know we talked about it last week, how they maybe could get out of this. I haven't. Like I said, I didn't see it happening, and I still don't see it happening now. As for our dark horse, who is a team that we should keep an eye on as on the rise in the future?
Okay. They're currently on the outside looking in. They're 3 games out from the 4 seed. Sacramento Kings. It's a young team that continuously seems to end up finishing middle of the pack. I think this year may be the year they finally step up. I'm huge on De'Aaron Fox, as everyone probably knows by now. To me, this team has a chance to rumble. They probably don't have the ability to knock down a Laker team, but if a Laker team was to lose to a Jazz team, there's a chance to beat a Jazz team kind of thing. I think when the stars align, this team has an okay chance to a good chance of being in the championship. That's where I'm sitting right now.
You also had them in the finals last year.
I'm not going to sit here and tell you you're wrong. It's a fact.
Yeah, I like the Kings. I'm obviously not as big on them as you are. De'Aaron Fox is great, but I just don't know what they have really besides that this year. Buddy Hield's been struggling a little bit. As for my team, I have the Phoenix Suns. They're currently sitting in the 4 seed right now, but obviously in the West it's very tight and contentious there. Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton are the future of this team. I think DeAndre Ayton is probably the most underrated player in basketball at this point. Nobody really talks about him because in that draft class, Luka and Trae Young were both selected, and everyone says that the Suns wasted that pick. But it was actually, when you think about it, it was a good pick because Luka and Trae Young wouldn't really fit with Devin Booker. Chris Paul, I think, brings a great deal of leadership to that team. Guys like Mikal Bridges, I think, have benefited well from that, and the Suns team is very good.
My team is the Miami Heat. I mean, early on, people thought, who knows, this could be a finals hangover. I mean, you see that with NBA, MLB. This could be a finals hangover for the Heat where they missed the playoffs. After missing Jimmy Butler for a few weeks, he's finally back, and he has been a big impact. Right now, they're the 9 seed, but with how the playoff works, technically they're in the playoff games. And as far as the team in general, I mean, with Jimmy Butler back, they have looked so much better. I mean, he's definitely had that leadership role back on the court. I mean, Tyler was doing his thing. Duncan Robinson, I think he be hurt. I may be wrong, but I mean, has, and I think going forward they can get back into maybe like a 5-6 seed. Who knows? Half a game back from the 6th seed, 1.5 back from the 5th. So they could very easily jump up to one of those top seeds. And if that's all, well, let's go to our next topic, which I mean, All-Star weekend's getting close. Looking at some of the voting, we'll just go top 5, West and East, and we'll kind of discuss. So in the West for the front court, I mean, top 5 is LeBron, 4.3 mil, Jokic, 3 mil, Kawhi, 2.4 mil, Anthony Davis, 2.3 mil, and Paul George at 1 mil. And for the guards, you got Steph at 4 mil, Luka at 2.4, Damian Lillard at 2 mil, Donovan Mitchell at 479K, and John Morant at 437. And for the East, we have Kevin Durant, 4. Giannis 3.2, Tatum 1.6, and Jimmy Butler at 600K. And then for guards, we got Bradley Beal at 2.5, Kyrie Irving at 2.1, Harden at 1.8, Jaylen Brown at 1 mil, and Zach LaVine at 936K. I'll ask this: are there any names that maybe have surprised you who are on the list and aren't on the list for both conferences? Lucas, start with you.
I think on the surface, this is an okay list. It's fan voting, so obviously you're going to see certain players that are playing well not get the votes they may want. You have people like Caruso, that's 10th in the Western Conference guards. I mean, you're still going to have that kind of stuff going on. But, I mean, this isn't the worst list. Obviously, LeBron's going to win Western Conference side captain. Apparently, Durant's going to win Eastern Conference side. To me, it's still a little early because, I mean, we still have 4 days along with our 2-for-1 voting days still coming up, which makes voting, there's a chance you could see skewing, but these guys are obviously the best that we have right now. And yeah, I mean, no surprises here for me personally, but maybe I'm wrong. Aaron?
I have a couple gripes. First of all, Domantas Sabonis should be in the top five without question in the East front court, if not in the top three. He's been balling out this year. As for the Western Conference guards, I believe Damian Lillard should be ahead of Luka Doncic for that starting spot, as Portland's just better than Dallas this year, and I think that is because of Damian Lillard. For the Western Conference front court, I think Paul George should definitely be ahead of Anthony Davis and potentially Kawhi Leonard. He's balling out this year. Let's see, what else? Zach LaVine should be ahead of Jaylen Brown after his recent performances. I think you could also argue Harden over Kyrie, just due to kind of Harden's all-around game. And that's really my main gripes. I think also Devin Booker maybe could have bumped ahead of Ja Morant there because Ja Morant has been hurt most of the year. But other than that, that's really all I see that's kind of with the list. Obviously, Caruso shouldn't be on there. Jeremy Grant should also be getting a little bit more recognition. He's been playing some fantastic ball this year.
I also
That's
called
all I
that
got.
one. Thank you.
Yep.
Ashton?
I mean, I don't really have. I guess part of my issue is obviously it's fan voting. So I mean, you see Thompson is 8th in the West, hasn't even touched the floor. I mean, obviously, as much as everybody loves to meme about Caruso and stuff, he's 10th. A name that surprised me on the list, Carmelo Anthony. Obviously, he's not what he once was in Denver and New York, but he's still a solid NBA player. I mean, I'm just surprised to see his name. Andrew Wiggins. That's kind of a surprising name too. He is currently a 6th.
He's been playing some good ball this year.
Anyway,
For those who may not be aware, Aaron is also the president of the Andrew Wiggins fan club.
Co-president now since he left, but still, I'm still involved. Or vice, sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
but
stupid.
as far as the rest of the rankings go, I mean, I don't think Jimmy Butler should be as high because of how many games he's been out. I'm hoping Julius Randle can make it. I mean, it's going to be tough because there's so many good players in the East this year, so many improving players like Jaylen Brown and Zach LaVine. But who knows? Otherwise, yeah, the rest of the list, I mean, just for a few kind of throw-in names. One name that kind of shocks me, Ja Morant. Obviously, he doesn't have the stats as like a LaVine, a Steph, a Bradley Beal, Luka, all these guys. But I mean, he's up there in the top 5. I wonder what your guys' thoughts on that, as far as should he be this high, or you think other players should be ahead of him on the list, Lucas?
Sorry, what was the question?
So looking at the voting, Ja Morant is currently 5th at 437K votes in the All-Star voting. Do you think he deserves to be that high, or do you think other people should be ahead of him in the voting?
I think something that comes into that is just the fact that he is well liked by the fans, which is why I don't take much into this, is because it's fans and I know how many stupid people there are in this world. And just to me, it's one of those things that it is what it is. And he's going to be where he's going to be. I don't know. Aaron?
Like I said earlier, I think Devin Booker should definitely be ahead of him, and then you could maybe throw in a couple names. CJ McCollum. Chris Paul, for sure, I think should also be ahead of him, as Ja Morant missed a few games. But other than that, I think it's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, like what you were saying, Aaron, I think Devin Booker could definitely be higher than them. Other than that, I mean, I guess he has been kind of balling out, even though the stats don't show it. He has been doing his thing, and it'll be interesting to see where that team goes in the future. That's it on that. Next topic involves Andre Drummond. Obviously, I believe I said it a week or two ago, or someone said it, that apparently the Cavs did not plan to buy out Andre Drummond, but teams are interested in trading for him. What type of impact would he have, and who do you think would have the best chance, or if they land Andre Drummond, Lucas.
Drummond to me is one of the best he is probably arguably the best rebounding big right now. His game right now being, I think he's good for points, good for rebounds, good for blocks right now, personally. To me, this is the same as every other year. The teams want Drummond. They're never gonna pay the amount that they supposed to give for Drummond. And to me, that's just the cruel way of life for Drummond, because obviously he'd love to be valued the way he should be, but he won't get there. I see him finishing this year on the Cavs or being bought out, just like I said last year that I saw him finishing the year on the Pistons or being bought out, or 2 years ago, whenever that was. Anyway, Aaron.
So I have 3 teams. I think he would go to the Clippers, Nets, or the Celtics. I think either of those 3 teams should throw their hat in the race for Andre Drummond, as, like you mentioned, he is the best rebounder in basketball. I don't think there's any debate there. And I think he would just add a ton for all those teams, especially the Nets. I think with him on the Nets, that would be just such a presence to kind of replace Jared Allen. As DeAndre Jordan is just, I think he's much better, coming off the bench, and he's just not fit for that starting role anymore, in my opinion. I think Andre Drummond would be a huge upgrade in that position.
Cap. They don't have any money. They just don't. I'm just telling you.
You don't need money in the NBA.
Well, they're not going to be able to put him on a contract to save their lives unless some odd
Well, it would
reason.
just be a 1-year minimum deal because he's going to get bought out. I guess that's. I'm saying bought out.
Okay, never mind.
Because if he gets bought out, he's going to get his money.
Yeah, sorry. I was thinking you were going to. Okay. Never mind. But carry on.
That's all I had.
Yeah, obviously the big team would be the Nets if they get him. I mean, they could definitely all be the favorites. Will they get him? It's going to be very hard. Like Lucas was saying with the contract, who knows what he's going to want. But who knows, maybe he takes a pay cut. Another team that comes into mind is maybe the Rockets. I mean, they're with how kind of stacked that West is. I mean, all the records are kind of close. So, and they don't, besides DeMarcus Cousins, I don't really think they have like a big center as far as I know. They have Christian Wood, but he plays power forward. I think he would fit well there. Other than that, I don't know where else he could go, but wherever he goes, obviously I think he'd be a great fit. Obviously will be a great rebounder, and yeah. That's it for that. We'll talk about our last thing, which was a interesting trade between my Knicks and the Detroit Pistons involved Derrick Rose going to New York in exchange for Dennis Smith Jr. and a 2021 second round. Lucas, what are your thoughts about this trade?
First of all, Dennis Smith Jr., I am sorry. I can only imagine having to move as many times as you have had to this early in your career. It's got to be. I think this trade is going to work well for both sides. It gives the Pistons yet another younger player that they can start to try and develop. I mean, obviously it's working really well with Jeremy Grant. It's giving them a little more firepower here. They got a second rounder that they can use on an international guy that no one knows about that's going to pan out, like a Nikola Mirotic or something weird. I mean, it was a step that I think was necessary for them to take, because I don't think Rose was planning to come back when that deal is over. They got an okay amount of value for him. On the Knicks side of it, Knicks got someone who's playing pretty good ball last year and a half, 2 years. I don't know how long it's been. COVID. But he's playing good enough ball that I think this is a warranted trade. I think it works well for us.
Yeah, I don't really think this is like a huge trade to discuss at all, but it works for both teams. Neither team benefited too much. Neither team lost a lot on either side. I think, like you said, Lucas, for the Pistons, it's a good idea to just kick the tires on Dennis Smith Jr. and just see what he can do. As Derrick Rose he's up there in age. He's not going to be his old self, obviously. And Dennis Smith Jr. has a ton of potential, so we'll see what he can do.
I yeah, I have a different reason why I think it's new teams, but as far as the Pistons, obviously Dennis Smith Jr. gets another redemption chance with the new team to kind of see if he can revive his career as a top 10 pick. And obviously, a second round pick, like Lucas said, maybe they'll find a diamond in the mine, like an Isaiah Thomas, a Draymond Green. I mean, one of those type of players. As far as the Knicks, I mean, it works because not only do you get to reunite him with Tom Thibodeau, but hey, with the new playoff system, the Knicks are up there fighting for maybe a possible play-in game for the playoffs for the 8th seed. Right now, I believe they're the 10th seed. I mean, it's interesting how they're gonna work it out with Alfred Payton, Emmanuel Quickley, who's been balling out, and Derrick Rose. But from what I saw when they played the Heat, they ran, I believe, Quickley at the 2, and they kind of split the minutes between those 3. Now, it'll be interesting to see how it goes, but I think for both teams, it benefits them quite well. All right, if that's all let's head over to the MLB, where Lucas will lead us off.
Alrighty, first and foremost, Bryant to the Mets rumors. What could it mean for each side, and does he have the chance to become an MVP? Aaron, you can start.
Well, I think, Chris Bryant was one of the best third basemen in baseball. He won his MVP a couple years back. I believe it was 2016 when the Cubs won the World Series. He won that MVP. He was pretty much, one of the top 5 players in baseball, absolutely. So if he can even get to near that form, especially in Citi Field, a decently hitter-friendly ballpark, hypothetically, if he does get traded to the Mets, which these, rumors are going around that he could get traded there. So I think he could, kind of get back to his MVP form. And as for what it means for each team, I think this is kind of the start of the next rebuild for the Cubs. It worked very well last time, but I do think it's time to blow it up. They traded Yu Darvish, obviously, in the offseason. Look for a trade for, a guy like Javi Baez with high trade value. Just kind of looking to reset. As for the Mets, I think it's time to go for it all. You have guys like DeGrom, Syndergaard, who you never know what he's going to be doing coming off of a big injury. And this lineup is very good, especially if they do add Chris Bryant. The Mets could be scary.
Yeah, I don't know if he'll necessarily get back to his MVP form, but if he goes to the Mets, he doesn't have to. I mean, what Aaron was saying, their lineup's pretty good. The rotation's great. I mean, it'll be interesting to see because obviously last year, even though it was a shortened season, early on throughout pretty much the whole year, he was struggling a lot. He was striking out a lot, and fans were kind of wondering what was going on with him. And then you saw he was battling with some injuries and stuff. And so I don't think he will get to his MVP form, but I don't think he necessarily has to. If he can be a solid third baseman, can have maybe like a 250 to 270 runs, maybe hit some home runs. As long as he can just do his job for, say, like a team like Mets, I think he can definitely help for a contender.
Yeah, I'm not sure where he'll end up going back to in terms of if he'll be able to resurrect his MVP self. However, I would find it very interesting if this trade was to happen because to me it shows the Mets are going for bust and the Cubs are going for a rebuild. Obviously backing down to the superior NL Central team, the Cardinals. Anyway, joke of the day in there. If he was to come into this Mets team, it'd be very interesting with them bringing in Lindor and him. I think, along with the pitching core, this team will probably be top 2, top 3. I'm very big on it if it happens. However, I don't think crazier things have happened. If that's all we got going for that, big signing recently. Trevor Bauer signed with the Dodgers. Aaron, go ahead.
Well, this is one of the biggest free agent signings we've seen in a while. Trevor Bauer, we saw what he did last year. He won the NL Cy Young. You could make the argument that he was the best pitcher in baseball last year. He just got the job done for the Reds. We saw what he did in that playoff game as well, shutting down the Braves lineup for 7 2/3, and then the Reds just couldn't give him any run support whatsoever. It was almost like a Jacob deGrom Met situation. Now he's going to a team where their rotation is absolutely stacked. Their lineup is absolutely stacked. You know, as for the Dodgers, I don't see how they don't repeat as champions this year.
Yeah, I mean, for the Dodgers, maybe it's very risky. Obviously, paying a pitcher 40 mil because you never know what can happen, especially in baseball. But for the Dodgers, I mean, you saw what happened for trade with Mookie Betts. They win the World Series the next year. I mean, and if you look at them compared to the Yankees, when they sign free agents, they pan out well. Whenever a Yankee signs or a free agent signs with the Yankees, a big time free agent, they have not really been to the World Series. So I think the Dodgers made a great decision to sign him, and yeah, definitely keep an eye at them as repeating champs.
Yeah, you guys summarized it well. Super strong pitching core. I think that it's just this team's really good this year. It's gonna take something interesting to happen for them not to repeat, and I hope the interesting thing happens. Next up, Aaron brought it up in the intro. We'll be ranking our top 5 rotations going into 2021. Aaron, please start with your number 5.
My number 5 rotation will be the Washington Nationals. They have had this top 3 for many years now. Obviously, Max Scherzer, Steven Strasburg, Patrick Corbin, and then the real issue for them is going to be the back end. Right now, slotted in, you have like Eric Fetty and Joe Ross. John Lester signed there, so you never know what you're going to get from him. So really, that 4 and 5 spot is going to be iffy for the Nationals. But I think that top 3, if they can hold it down like they have been in these past few years, it is a very strong rotation, and they could potentially, try to earn themselves a spot in that NL East.
My number 5 is the Chicago White Sox. A name that I've been seeing that kind of has been for the White Sox, Lance Lynn. I mean, you saw what he did with the Rangers last year. He was an absolute stud for them. I mean, not to mention he'll go along with Lucas Giolito. I mean, he was a beast last year. Dallas Keuchel, not necessarily what he once was with Houston, but he's still a solid pitcher. And then you got guys like Dylan Cease and Carlos Rondon. So, I mean, this White Sox rotation could definitely be scary for the AL Central. Just depends on if Lance Lynn will pan out, and if the rest of the rotation will step it up.
My number 5 will actually be the Yankees. Obviously, strong with Cole and Kluber. And for me, those are the 2 big names to put them at 5. And from there, it's just I have 4 teams that I'm out.
I do want to bring up the Yankees real quick. They did trade for James Tyone from the Pirates this offseason. And then I think the big thing with them is just health. Domingo Germán got banged up at the end of last year. Severino, you never know when he's healthy. DV Garcia, he's been inconsistent. So I think that's a good pick there at 5. I just don't know how they're going to be able to stay healthy and if they can be consistent. If you couldn't tell, I don't have the Yankees in my top 5. That's why I said that.
I figured. I was waiting for your number 4.
Yeah, my number 4 team is the Cleveland Indians. Last year they were insane in the pitching spectrum. Obviously the big name is Shane Bieber, who won the Cy Young last year. It was absolutely dominant, the undisputed best pitcher in the American League. After that, you have Zach Plesac, Aaron Savali, Tristan McKenzie, and Cal Quantrill. Those guys, the average listener may not know, those guys. Zach Plesac last year had a all-star caliber year. People don't realize it. Savali has had his moments. McKenzie has also had his moments. And, these Savali, McKenzie, and Quantrill are very equal to me. They're very, pretty average, steady pitchers. But I think this rotation is carried by their top 2 in Bieber and Plesac.
My number 4 rotation is the New York Mets. No, not the Yankees. Obviously, Jacob deGrom, he's always going to be up there for possible Cy Young candidate. And then you got guys like recently acquired Carlos Carrasco, Marcus Stroman, Noah Syndergaard. And obviously, what's listed here is either Joey Bouchassi or David Peterson, whoever they go with. They are definitely forced to be reckoned with. And, Noah Syndergaard has fallen off a little bit, but if he can bounce back from past couple of years, I think they can definitely be an interesting team for this upcoming season.
I'm going to jump in here quick about the Mets, too. I like your point on Noah Syndergaard coming off of that Tommy John surgery. I think he is the key for the Mets just as a whole because, a couple years back, 2016, 2015, he was one of the best pitchers in baseball. And if he can get back to that point, the Mets are scary.
My number 4 is going to be the Nationals. Really big on them. Got a lot of old head names. Scherzer, Corbin, Strasburg, Lester. They have the experience necessary. However, I don't know if they have the flair. I think that this team's still going to be strong, as most people are still predicting. It's just, I have them at 4. Aaron?
For my number 3 team, I have the Atlanta Braves. This team is kind of unlike the first two that I talked about. It's a really deep rotation. You have Charlie Morton, Max Fried, Mike Soroka, Ian Anderson, Drew Smyly, Kyle Wright are kind of the last 3 there that'll fill in the 4 and 5 slot. The key to this rotation for me is going to be can Mike Soroka come back healthy after tearing his Achilles last year. You don't really see Achilles tears from pitchers very often, so there's not much to go off of to whether he can stay healthy or not, or whether that will affect him or not. But if he comes back, assuming that he will in his previous form, this rotation is unbelievably deep. Charlie Morton, we saw what he could do in the playoffs last year. One of the best pitchers in baseball. Max Fried as well. He lit up the Cincinnati Reds in that game that I talked about earlier. Shut them down for 7 clean innings. So I think this is a very strong rotation that a lot of people are overlooking.
Number 3 rotation is the San Diego Padres. Obviously, 2 big acquisitions in Yu Darvish and Blake Snell. And also, to go along with the rest of the rotation, Nelson Lamet, Joe Musgrove, and Chris Paddock. Obviously, Darvish and Snell will lead the rotation. It's just all about can these other 3 names kind of fill in for Darvish and Snell and dominate as far as
My number 3 is probably going to be the New York Mets. I think I'm big on DeGrom and I'm big on Carrasco. I'm a fan of Syndergaard, but as you guys have hinted before, it's going to come down to how he recovers. And then I think Stroman will be a good extra one. And then that 5th spot to me is a question. But regardless, we know what we're going to get from him. And we're just hoping it's the best that we can get. Okay.
My number 2 team is the San Diego Padres, as Ashton mentioned earlier. Very solid rotation for Darvish, Snell, and Dinelson Lamet. I think those 3 will kind of be the big dogs in that one. Also, Chris Paddock, if he can kind of reinvent himself as he did in 2019. Last year, he was just not it. I think if he can get back to that 2019 form, this rotation will be crazy good. And then that 5th spot, it'll be between Joe Musgrove and Mackenzie Gore. Musgrove has been a proven commodity in this league. You can get the job done. Mackenzie Gore is an absolute stud in the minors. So I don't know if he'll get called up right away this year or if they want to wait and get that extra year of protection on him, which I would assume they would do. So I would expect him to come up midway through the year and potentially be a big arm for this Padres team.
My number 2 rotation is the Washington Nationals. Obviously, you got the big dogs and Max Scherzer, Steven Strasburg. You saw what they did couple years ago in the World Series and just the postseason in general. Obviously, Patrick Corbin as well. Fired John Lester, who will be definitely an interesting name for that rotation, and obviously Joe Ross. But I think Strasburg and Scherzer alone power this rotation, along with Lester. While, yes, maybe he's not what he used to be in Boston and the early years in Chicago, I think this rotation will definitely be a top force to be reckoned with in the MLB.
Yeah, my number 2 is the Padres. You guys have already hammered it in pretty well. You guys know the names Darvish, Snell, Lamet, Paddock, Musgrove. I mean, to me, these guys are really strong, and up until last week, I would have had them at number 1. But obviously, something happened this week, and that's why it had to change. Aaron, number 1.
Well, my number 1 team for the rotation is the Minnesota Twins. With Quinton Maeda, Jose Barrios, it's a heck of a rotation. No, actually, it's the Dodgers. Everyone knows it's the Dodgers. Trevor Bauer, Walker Buehler, Clayton Kershaw you could make the argument the 3 of the top 5 pitchers in baseball. Obviously, you could throw any name in there. The backside of this rotation is going to be interesting to see who they put in. They have a few options. David Price, you would assume, would get that 4 spot. And then number 5, my guess would be you're going with Dustin May, but also you have Julio Urias and Tony Gonsolin, both guys who proved that they could come out of the bullpen in the playoffs last year. So my guess would be that they kind of stay in the bullpen until, guys need to skip starts. I'm sure Kershaw will be on some form of an innings limit. So maybe expect him to miss a few starts and see Gonsolin or Urias step in. But if Dustin May can, figure it out, he is electric. Like, if you watched him last year, he throws that sinker, upwards of 101, 102. He has nasty stuff. So this rotation is just disgusting. Trevor Bauer, NL Cy Young winner. You could pick any of these guys for a Cy Young candidacy. It's insane.
All right. Well, my number 1 rotation is the St. Louis Cardinals.
Yeah.
If only this were Lucas' imaginary list. My number 1 rotation is the Dodgers as well. I mean, obviously with Bauer, they look almost unstoppable with him, Buehler, and Kershaw. And then obviously David Price, while he's not what he used to be, he's still a solid pitcher. And like Aaron was saying, just depends with that 5th spot. Dustin May, Julio Urias, or however you say his last name. Yeah, Dodgers look amazing and obviously could repeat this year.
Yeah, number 1, St. Louis Cardinals. Chris Carpenter, pitcher. Okay. I shouldn't pick my joke. It's okay. Dodgers, to me, they'll start May in the 5th spot is the only thing I'm going to cut in with. Similar to Aaron. I have the same layout of a rotation as Aaron. I think the Dodgers pitching core is the most elite one I've seen since I started watching baseball, even including the years I watched before I took my 6-year break. And to me, it's going to be a great year. Anyway.
All right, gentlemen. Do we have anything else to add?
Yeah.
All right. That's going to do it for us here on the Sports Enthusiast podcast. We'd like to thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you check us out on Instagram at the Sports Enthusiast, Twitter at SportsENTPod. Let us know if you have any suggestions. Put a comment down on YouTube. Give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. That's about it. Like I said, let us know any suggestions. And you guys have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thank you.